They stayed for 4 hours. Later, neither of them could account for exactly how the afternoon simply opened, the way afternoons in Kyoto do, as if time there runs on a different agreement. Keiko poured tea 3 times. She did not rush. She had the manner of someone who has been rehearsing this conversation for 22 years and is no longer in a hurry to reach the end of it.
I'll start from the beginning, which is not where you think it starts.
Please.
It doesn't start with Winter Sonata. It doesn't start with the Korean wave. It starts in 1952, before either of your mothers was born, before I was born. It starts with my father and a boy he knew, and a debt that was never repaid, because the war ended before anyone could repay it.
Mama, you've never told me any of this.
You never came home with the right person to tell it to.
Yuki looked at her mother. Keiko was refilling Jun-ho's cup, unhurried, as if she had not just said something that rearranged the room. Jun-ho was very still. The stillness of someone who has learned that interrupting a story is the fastest way to lose it.
My father was a carpenter. After the war, the Korean War, not the Second World War, though he survived that too, he was contracted to help rebuild in Busan. 1952, 1953. He was 24. He spoke no Korean. The boy he worked alongside spoke no Japanese. They communicated in the way men do when there is work to be done and no common language, with their hands, with tools, with the particular respect that comes from watching someone do something difficult and do it well.
What was the boy's name?
My father called him Sagun, which I think was not his real name, just what my father heard and kept. He was 17. He had been a student before the war. He played piano when he could find one, my father said. Badly, at first, then beautifully. In the rubble of a church in Busan, on a piano missing its highest octave, he played. My father would stop working to listen.
Jun-ho set his cup down. He did it carefully, the way you set something down when your hands are not entirely steady. Seogun.
They worked together for 8 months. Then the armistice came and everything scattered. My father came home to Kyoto. He never heard from the boy again. But he talked about him, not often, but at specific moments. When he heard piano music he liked, when he saw craftsmanship that impressed him, he would say, "There was a boy in Busan who would have appreciated this."
And you think,
I don't think, I know. I don't think I think this in 2003, with the cassette tape. She didn't explain it. She just wrote, "I think you should have this."
The photograph was older than the one in the archive. Black and white, smaller, the paper thicker. The kind of photograph that costs something to develop, taken by someone who understood it might be the only one. 2 young men in work clothes standing in front of a half-rebuilt wall. One Japanese, one Korean, both squinting slightly into the sun, both grinning. On the back, in her father's handwriting, Keiko's father, the carpenter, one line. Busan, August 1952. Seogun and me.
That is my grandfather. That is So Gwang-soo. He went to Busan in 1952 as a student volunteer in the reconstruction. He played piano. He never talked about Japan, but he had a Japanese word he used sometimes when something was well made. Just one word. Takumi. Craftsmanship. My mother told me he said it the day she played piano for him for the first time. She was 7.
One word. Carried from a carpenter in Kyoto, through a summer in Busan, through a grandfather who never explained it, to a 7-year-old girl learning piano, who grew up and came to Japan and left a cassette tape in a city she could not stay in, for a woman on a street she loved, who kept playing it so it would not forget it was meant to be heard. The room was quiet for a long time. Outside, the persimmon tree moved in the late afternoon wind. The cassette had stopped playing. At some point between Keiko's second and third telling, it had reached the end of its tape and gone silent. And none of them had noticed, until now. Because the silence it left was not empty. It was the silence of something completed. Keiko sent them into the garden at 5 o'clock, in the manner of someone who understands that some conversations need to move from indoors to open air. The garden was small, Kyoto small, which means everything unnecessary has been removed and what remains is precise. A stone basin, a single maple already beginning to turn, the last of the afternoon light coming over the rooftop in a long horizontal line.
I owe you an apology.
For what?
For being professional. In the archive, on the train. I kept making it professional because the alternative was to admit that none of this is professional. None of this is coincidence and licensing agreements and documentary consulting. And I am not good at things I cannot organize.
You told me which window to look through for Fuji.
That's different.
You counted 40 seconds in your head so I wouldn't miss it. That's not professional. That's care. In the language of someone who cares by counting and organizing and knowing exactly when the light is right.
She looked at him then. The maple tree held its turning leaves above them, the color of something between gold and letting go. She had not cried in 3 years. She was still not crying. But her face was doing something it had not done in 3 years. It was open. Not collapsed, not broken. Open, in the way a window is open, still itself, just allowing more air.
Your mother came to this city. She walked this street. She heard a melody that your grandfather brought from a carpenter in Kyoto who was my grandfather's friend. And she left it here, in a tape, for my mother to keep. And then you came, and I was the one in the archive. And the piece she taught herself was the piece I was listening to on the day we met. I don't know what to do with that.
Neither do I. But I think I came here to make a documentary about the Korean wave coming to Japan. And I think the real documentary is something older and smaller and more specific. It's about 2 families and 1 street and a melody that traveled so far it forgot where it started. And I can't make it without you.
That is still a professional statement.
I know. I'm working on it.
The garden held its dusk light for a long time, longer than it should have, or perhaps they simply stopped measuring. The maple leaves did not fall. The stone basin held a small mirror of sky. And somewhere inside the house, without either of them deciding to, Keiko put the cassette back to the beginning and pressed play. Dinner was tofu and rice and pickled plum, and silence of the comfortable kind. Keiko fed them without fanfare, in the way of someone who equates feeding with love and sees no need to announce either. After the dishes were cleared, she placed something else on the table. Not a photograph this time. An envelope. Thick, cream-colored, unsealed. She slid it toward Jun-ho.
Your mother left this too. With the cassette in 2003. She said, if someone comes, give them this last. Not first, last. When they're ready.
What is it?
I don't know. I never opened it. It wasn't mine to open.
He looked at the envelope for a long time. Then he looked at Yuki. She gave him the smallest nod. Not permission exactly, more the presence of another person who would hold whatever came out of it.
It's sheet music, handwritten. The title is Bomi Omyeon, When Spring Comes.
That's what she wrote on the back of the photograph. I'll come back when spring comes.
This is the melody. The 8 bars I couldn't finish. She wrote the rest. She wrote the whole piece. She finished it. She finished it and left it here and didn't tell me.
She finished it and left it here. She knew she was not coming back in spring. She finished the piece so someone else could. Keiko folded her hands on the table and said nothing. There was nothing to add. Yuki reached across the table and placed her hand over Jun-ho's, over the hand that was holding the sheet music, not removing it from him, just there, alongside. He did not move. He looked at the music. He read every bar. He read it 3 times. Then he folded it carefully, the way his mother had folded it, and put it back in the envelope, and held the envelope with both hands on his knees.
I need to learn to play it.
I know someone with a piano.
It's in the back room. It was always in the back room. I had it tuned last week.
The piano was a Yamaha upright, dark wood, the kind of instrument that has been played enough to have opinions. Keiko had had it tuned, as she said, but it was not entirely corrected, the way old pianos resist full correction, holding on to their particular color of imperfection. Yuki sat on the bench. Jun-ho stood beside her, the sheet music open on the stand. The single lamp in the back room made everything amber and close.
Show me where bar 7 is, the part I recognized on the train.
Here. This is where it turns.
She had good hand position. You can tell from the notation. She thought about the fingers.
She practiced every day. Even when we had no piano. She would play on the kitchen table. The wood was marked from it, little dents where her fingers pressed.
Yuki played the first 4 bars, slowly. The piano held its slight imperfection and gave it warmth. Jun-ho did not speak. The second voice, the cello line he had heard in his own composition that had always seemed to come from somewhere outside himself, he hummed it, quietly, almost unconsciously, standing beside her in the amber light. She heard him. She played the turn at bar 7. He hummed through it. The melody completed itself for the first time, in a back room in Kyoto, played by a woman who had heard it through her mother's lips 20 years ago, and a man who had written it, without knowing he was remembering.
It doesn't end. The piece. It just resolves. And then there's space.
That's how she left everything, with space, for whoever came next.
The lamp burned. The maple in the garden moved against the night window. Keiko, in the other room, did not come to the doorway. She had heard what she needed to hear. The sound of the piece being played by 2 people who understood it. Yuki lifted her hands from the keys. Jun-ho did not step back. The space between them was no longer empty. It held something that neither of them had a word for yet. Which was fine. The piece had taught them that some things complete themselves in their own time, and the job of the people holding them is simply not to let go before then.